Major Donald E. Kehoe, a retired Marine Corps officer, insisted that the Air Force knew more than it was telling.
We are being observed by some type of device which is far ahead of us and is probably controlled by a highly advanced superior civilization.
You're listening to Canary Cry Radio. Now here are your hosts, Basil and Gons.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Canary Cry Radio. My name is Gons, and we have a very special guest today.
Gons, hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello? Gons?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hold on a second.
All right.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, now I can hear you. Whew. Okay, well, I'm glad I got here on time.
Awesome.
I got your message this morning.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing calling me so early.
Yeah, I left you a message at 11 a.m. your time.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What are you doing calling me so early? You know, I operate at night, man. That was my prime sleeping times, 11 a.m.
Yeah,
it's like midnight to me.
Yeah, okay. Well, next time I'll make sure to call you after lunch, bright and early for you. So you're awake.
I'm awake.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I made it.
So are you back no?
No, I'm not back.
No, you're still
I'm far away still.
Yeah.
But as your message said, we had a very special guest today that I just couldn't pass up.
Yeah. If you couldn't make it, then I probably would have.
I know you couldn't have handled it without me, Gons. I know you just rely on me as just your spiritual and emotional anchor, and I won't let you down again.
Well, you've already let me down, more than once, so you're going to have to do some making up.
I'm here to make it up to you, man.
If you want to step it up and,
Well, I'm just following the wind. And so, we have an audience too. Hey, everybody. This is Basil, and I'm back for now. Still out and about in the world, but are you gonna give away any of your what your mission is? I know you said you're on a mission this last episode, but you didn't really give any detail. Can't. You can't. Why? It's too soon. Too soon. No, but what I can give away is I was just about to talk about our guest for today.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe hidden somewhere in the conversation will be some talk about what I'm out doing.
Oh.
Who knows? I don't know. Maybe I'll just decide to drop some. Anyways, today we've got such a wonderful show that I've worked so diligently and hard to connect with Gons on today to talk to this very special guest whom we all know and love. Some of you may be familiar with him. And Gons, what is his name?
Stan Deyo.
Very smart guy. Incredible, tremendous story. And he's just going to go over it a little bit with us today. We've got a lot to talk about. So, I don't know. What do you say?
I say we dive into the conversation. And for those of you who don't know who Stan Deyo is, he's the author of a book called The Cosmic Conspiracy. And he's held above top secret security clearance and worked undercover for the FBI. He was a part of an exclusive black project headed by Dr. Edward Teller, specializing in the development of flying saucer technology.
Yeah.
So,
and this guy has had adventures and has been in situations that would make James Bond pale in comparison.
Yeah, James Bond has nothing on Stan Deyo.
And he's also fake, and Stan Deyo is real.
He's definitely real.
It's an incredible thing. So here we go.
All right.
Interview with Stan Deyo. Visit standeyo.com.
Are we going to fall into the ocean here in California?
California is definitely going to have problems, and I've been watching it now for several months. if you'll look on the USGS earthquake map, at some time when you get a chance, you'll see over the last month that there've been, in fact, even longer now, huge numbers of Richter 5s or better all over on the western side of the Pacific and down into as far as northern, like in Fiji, and in through the Krakatoa Trench, or over into Singapore and that region there. Now, these big earthquakes are like 4 or 5 to 1 occurring on the western side of the Pacific, and a few of them down across on the southeastern side of the Ring of Fire in South America. But they're moving toward the United States from both directions, from north of Japan heading over toward Alaska, and from South America and Central America moving up our way. So I suspect sometime this year we're going to see some ripper earthquakes up along the California coast and Oregon coast.
You just provided me with some more ammo to my T-chart on trying to decide whether to move out of California or not. So thank you for that.
Gonzo, I tell you what, I wish I could get everyone that was thinking and really, good people out of there. We've got a number of friends over there, and most of them, one or the husband or the wife, doesn't want to move, and the other one realizes they need to. But it's going to be difficult over there.
Yeah,
well, that's tough stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but yeah, it's difficult to try to drop everything and try to figure out job situation. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to consider in that. With that,
there sure is.
Yeah. Admittedly,
yeah.
Look, I'm keeping an eye on earthquakes, and I try to give people as much warning as I can. Some of these bigger ones have been sneaking up and coming within 8 to 12 hours after I forecast them. So
wow,
we're not getting much lead time.
Well, there you go. That's some. I'll remember that next time you come out with an urgent call.
Yep.
Okay, so you want to just get started here, Gons?
Yeah, let's do it. Well, Stan, there's been several interviews that you've done where you've gone through your story, and I mean, we don't have time to go through everything, but is there a way you can sort of walk through some of the high points and perhaps some of the low points even of your experience? Because your story is just, it's almost unbelievable. It's one of those things that I think maybe in the future one of us will make a movie out of. It's got that kind of story to it. So can you give us a highlight or a quick run through of what you experienced and what got you into the exposing of the Illuminati and all the skullduggery, as you call it?
So everybody knows why me and Gons are so excited.
Well, I guess on the idea of the Illuminati, my father first got me interested in that in about 1959 or 60, somewhere in there we did it. And he'd been a base commander at the end of World War II over in Iran at Tehran. And he didn't get out of technically he was dismissed from the Army Air Force to become a private citizen with a bunch of his guys on the base there. They all resigned and became one of the first black ops running over there in the Middle East before the CIA formed. They were under OSS. And their paychecks were being sent over after the end of the war for 2 years by Howard Hughes. Wow. And they were holding off the Russians, bluffing them, letting them think that we had an American presence there on the base so that they wouldn't invade the oil fields before our White House guys realized that it was important to guard the oil fields. Wow. Anyway, so Dad was, in the forefront of seeing that there were things happening behind the scenes that did not agree with what the current administration of the White House wanted. And in investigating, when he came back, he found out about the Illuminati, and he, of course, taught me. I was getting older then, a teenager, and I got firsthand to stand beside him and watch him work with the H.L. Hunt brothers, Lamar and Bunker T, and how they fought to wake up America against the Illuminist takeover of this country. So it was inbred from that point forward, and
wow,
that's how it started. And I went off to the Air Force Academy and came back to Dallas and trained in computing at IBM and was leading a somewhat normal life, still aware of what was going on, but discovered a way to make a flying saucer work very efficiently.
Whoa. Whoa. That's a big detail to just sort of slip in there.
Well, at home there in Mesquite outside Dallas, I had built a den where I did my research into what I was really interested in, which was antigravity and making faster aircraft, and also ways to grab electricity out of the air free. And
okay.
So
that's a productive pastime, I think, for a youngster.
It was. Some unusual things happened, though, that, they're not going to happen to the ordinary fella, I guess. But I have to give credit where credit's due. I nearly died in '69. I got an infection of some kind of a microbe or bacteria or something, and they treated me at the hospital one night with acromycin 4, which was an experimental antibiotic at the time. And
right.
I died and left my body that night at home. I went back home, and I was, on my own there in the apartment. And good Lord, I left my body, went out and did a life review, and was, on my way to being permanently gone from here.
Fascinating.
And something pulled me back in. I'm shortening the story and the details of it for, another time. But
right, I would imagine.
When I came back into my body, the things that I was shown out there and the knowledge I had started to spill out over the edge of my body. I couldn't contain that in my body. When I came back into it, I felt it slipping away. And I had answers to things like, how does the universe work? What makes galaxies work, and gravity? And, Einstein's equations were playthings out there. But back in the body, it wasn't quite so simple. But I knew there was things I left out there.
Right.
And while I was out there, I was somehow or another, programmed to write The Cosmic Conspiracy. And if you knew how much I hated literature in English in school, you'd understand the gravity of what I'm saying. But
right. Well, an experience like that could help you overcome some of those dislikes, I think.
Well, things started to happen after that, and the wife and I got back together. We'd been separated for a few months, had a bit of a disagreement, and we got back together and bought a house out in Mesquite, and I started dreaming at night some strange things. Like I would be dreaming equations and solutions and stuff, and seeing flying saucers in colors expand like in a 3D CAD/CAM program and rotate to my thought as I want to see, how does this work? Where does that go? And galaxies. I mean, it all started to come back in dream form. And one night, down in the, it was near Christmas time, and the wife and I were, this is my former wife, Marty, we were sitting down in the den, and which is my lab as well. And I had a blackboard there by the desk. And I'd been trying to figure out how light, which is obviously a waveform, propagated from the sun to the earth. And I'd drawn a sun up on the blackboard and an earth off to the right, and a bunch of little dots, which represented atoms of something, to transmit this wave over to the earth.
Right.
And I had been reading a book that evening by a biography on Albert Einstein that one of my staff had given me at the office as a Christmas present. And in there, I was reading, and he said he'd had trouble figuring out how light propagated through empty space, and I went up to the blackboard and tried to figure out with graphics how it might happen. And I thought, what am I doing? I can't compete with Einstein. And I erased the board and sat back down, and I picked up the book, which I was enjoying, and it was like it was written in Russian or something. I could not understand a word I was reading. My mind could not read anymore. And I said to Marty, I said, gee, I can't read this book. I can't read. What's happened to you? My mind has gone funny. She said, well, whatever you're working on at the board over there, you go back over and finish it. Obviously, you're not finished over there. So I said, right. And I went over there with a piece of chalk in my hand. I thought, I'll put the chalk up on the board. Maybe something will come to me. And as I put the chalk up on the board, I looked at my hand, and the chalk point was in the middle of a perfect eraser dust portrait of Albert Einstein from the sun. and I looked at that, and I said, boy, I've gone off the deep end. And I turned around to Marty and I said, look, I want to ask you something. She says, well, before you do, who's that picture up on the board? Who? I said, you see that, do you? And then, things kind of progressed after that. And I was approached by a representative of Dr. Teller's group and at my office. They knew more about what I was doing than I did, and they explained they'd already had anti-gravity by that time and wanted me to join their team down in Australia. And I did, and took the family down, and we experienced a lot of other exciting things down there. My control officer down there was Captain Sir John Williams, who was knighted by the Queen of England, and he had a file on me an inch thick by the time I got there. And time passed, a couple of years, and we parted ways because I realized that they were hiding technologies from the people that needed to be let out. And what really got my attention was one day at lunch, Sir John took me over in Melbourne, took me over to the Melbourne Club, where all the hoity-toities of Australia kind of ate, the political power group on the kind of conservative side.
Okay.
And I was surprised to hear him say that he didn't like the Jews because, of course, my father was Jewish, and I thought, okay, is that a direct insult, or did he just not read my bio properly? I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, he and Sir Henry Somerset were talking, and we had another guy there from the University of Tasmania, and they were talking about some nebulous group moving in on us, and waved his hand in the air, and I thought it was like the European Economic Community they were worried about, and it wasn't. Eventually, I found out it was this alien business they were talking about. But anyway, I was sitting in the middle of this cafeteria there, this dining hall inside this Melbourne Club for the elite, and I looked around, and there were probably 85% of them with cotton tops, white-haired old guys with cigars and port, and the typical, British Raj type collection of bodies around the room.
Right.
And they changed the conversation at the table real quickly when I asked about the European Economic Community, and said, no, that's not what we're talking about. Anyway, within a few months, we had parted ways because I was pressing them to release certain technologies to third world countries to let them have access to power and water cheaply to grow food and survive. And
right.
I didn't understand that their plan was to allow several 100 million people to die by attrition, so that no blame could be pointed at them. And I did eventually get to intercept a CIA courier coming out of the Middle East, coming out of Asia. I think it was out of the Asian Institute for Advanced Studies there. And he allowed me kind of looking the other way to get a document out of the briefcase that was handcuffed to his wrist. And I got to see the document how they were going to let 100 million people die over in India using this grain loan business.
Wow.
And so, it suddenly dawned on me. I've been working with people that are manipulating governments and peoples and technology. And these are the Illuminati I'm working with. Smart fellow here. It took me a while to figure it out. And then when I did, and did leave the organization, and I tricked them. I left, and for a few months I worked in a civilian job there in Melbourne, in a fast food.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but how on earth did you get out? You said you tricked them?
Yeah, well, you don't really get away from them entirely, and but they destroyed all my records, gave me copies of things, and said, "Now then, do what you want to them with, but you never existed with us, and we don't know you anymore." And I thought, right, well, I'll have to get a job and work now. So I, worked for a civilian thing, and I was working in a Mexican restaurant fast food thing that a friend of mine worked in, and I was paying my bills that way, and I sent the wife and children back to the States for safety because I knew that things were going to go south pretty quick. And a president of one of the corporations that this Teller Group owned came to see me at that Mexican food restaurant and asked to have private lunch with me upstairs in a room by ourselves. And so I went up there, and we had our lunch and a couple of really good bottles of wine, and I was pretty pliable at that point. And he said, look, we decided that maybe we'll put you back to work, and we'll build a laboratory for you down at the bottom of a mine shaft we got over here in Ballarat, just up 65 miles out of town, in the middle of nowhere, so nobody kind of suspect what you're doing, and you can work on your energy development there, and we'll, it's about several thousand feet deep, so we can run the antenna wire down to you instead of running up in the air where everybody could see it, and you can have your own lab there. But you can't tell anybody you're going there. And, I thought, well, okay, yeah, right, okay. Can't tell anybody I'm going to be at the bottom of a several thousand foot deep old gold mine and all the equipment up on the top to get me up and down could disappear, and then I'd be trapped.
Oh,
actually, I would die. I remember after, a whole bottle of wine on my side, of the table, I thought, yeah, this doesn't sound exactly kosher.
yeah.
So I thanked him very much. And it took me many years after that to figure out that had they wanted me dead, really, I would have been dead.
Right.
What they were doing was because of the overthrow of our bases that was coming, they knew that the alleged aliens that were sharing our base facilities underground with us were going to take over the labs. They were already starting to kick up a storm, and there was, fights between the humans and them. And so they were letting me, and I heard about another guy like me they sent off to England the same way. They were letting us escape, destroying all records of our presence so they couldn't track us, the critters, and that we would have the information to tell people what had happened when the organization was overthrown. And but I didn't know that at the time, and so I ran, and I figured out a way to get away at midnight one night without telling anybody except the guy that was my friend there at the restaurant. I gave up my apartment, which was a house really, and I started staying at the restaurant. And then one night after we'd finished about midnight, I packed up my car and I shook hands with Tom, and I said, "Tom, I'll let you know where I am when I get there. Thank you very much." And he knew what was going on. And so I drove all night halfway across the country and stayed there with some hippie friends I'd met who were, long-haired dope smokers with sunglasses and stuff and beads. And, they were a good cover, and I could travel with them. And I spent several months there in a safe house with them. That was a friend of theirs, and grew my hair out and had a bandana on it and wore the sunglasses and the hippie-looking clothes so that I could just disappear in a crowd.
I'm sure that was a good look for you.
Well,
I could imagine you.
Well, it was interesting. I grew this beard, and I've kept it since then, kind of in memory of those days. But I can tell you that when you dress like that, poor white trash scum or whatever you want to call that look, I'd walk downtown in Adelaide, where that was where the safe house was. I'd walk downtown, and decent folks with, suits and dresses and stuff would walk by, and they wouldn't see you. They would look the other direction because you were such an offense to their eyes. So it was a great disguise. And anyway, I did get away and get over to Perth, and there I found that I was protected by the ASIO branch, the Australian Security Intelligence Organization of West Australia. They kept the other guys off my back, and they even killed one guy that broke into their headquarters to get my file. He had my file in his hands when they shot him.
Ooh.
And I had a bodyguard or two over there. One had been the former bodyguard for the Prime Minister of Japan when he came over. And another one was an Army guy that carried Mother under his left armpit, which is a really nice 45 automatic, and he accompanied me when I did public speaking over there. And they let me live, but the U.S. corporations wouldn't let me have jobs with any U.S. companies there, so I had to eventually find my own way and work for small companies over there. And long story again, but I did eventually get cornered into doing a tell-all interview on Channel 9 there about my involvement in the Teller Project. And
the film you're about to see has taken our investigation team 6 months to research and assemble, and has involved them in a trip around the world. We have met the people at the heart of the UFO phenomenon, and it is their opinion that UFOs are here.
when that aired, it became the highest rating documentary they'd ever had, and publisher came and wanted to write my book for me, and it got to be too hard. They burned out 3 writers and editors and gave it back to me after I told them I'll do it myself, and that's how the Cosmic Conspiracy was written.
Wow. I mean,
My goodness.
it's just an amazing story. And you mentioned so many things.
Tremendous story.
There's so many things, little things that you mentioned that I want to pick up on. And one of them is that you had mentioned these so-called aliens in, the underground bases working with the government. Can you tell us more about that? Did you see any of them? Did you come across people talking about them? How did you find out about?
Yeah. Some of the guards. We weren't allowed to know much across lines of research. It was very compartmentalized, and mine was on plasma craft rather than antigravity. But I talked to a couple of security people. One was a South African that was working on the team. Another was an English guy, and they told me about their guard details and stuff in England and elsewhere. In West Germany, in the tunnels where they were testing after World War II, they picked up some of the German discs and actually had little railway cars that were flat, like a service car on a railway track underground in some of the abandoned tunnels that the Germans had built, and they would mount a test disc, an electrogravitic disc, sideways on it so that it was on its edge, and the saucer shape, the dome of it, would be pointing down the track. And one of the guards was telling me, he said, I was standing there when they first tested that, and he said it would weigh about 4 tons. And they said, okay, clear the track, stand back. And he said they pushed the go button, and there was a brief flash down the other end of the track I was watching, he said, and before I could turn my head and follow to my right and down to the end of the track, it was gone. It had gone that fast. It went right past him. He said, you didn't hear a thing until it hit the brakes down the other end.
Wow.
And then, one of my British security guards was telling me about the critters that they captured in England. One of the craft crashed and broke up off the English coast, and they retrieved 2 or 3 of them alive. Then there was some testing after the fact, some reverse engineering that we did, our people did, on their craft. And he watched a new crew take off one of them from a cradle there at the test area in England. And he said, I was watching it, and he said the disc lifted up slowly, just very slowly off the cradle, and kind of like a leaf in the wind, it kind of went to the left and to the right. And then it stopped, stabilized, took a new direction. It kind of tilted in a direction where it was going. And he says it was gone, and behind it was circular rainbows followed it in the path it left in the air. And he said, yeah, really a beautiful sight, he said. But I didn't see it, and I didn't meet the aliens. Well, none of the little gray critters, because you'd never forget that if you did. But I suspect there were 2 people I met, a man and a woman. They were humanoid, but they were tall. And I felt in their presence kind of like a mouse would be in a cage with a big cat,
Wow.
I was threatened, but I don't know.
And they looked completely humanoid. They looked like regular people, only taller.
Yeah, and there's a manner about them that is intimidating. Right. It's hard to explain, but as though you're nothing but fodder in their way,
Wow.
Anyway, now, and I may have met others, but after that fact, didn't know it. But most of the information I got on the alien situation was by word of mouth from guards or other people involved that were out of the project. And getting them to talk over the years was an interesting trick. But anyway, they did, and we did share information. And I got more information from one of the security guards who was assigned to the anti-gravity division. And I'd known a bit about some of it before I left the organization, but the security guards' information absolutely showed me how to do it, the circuit diagrams and whatever he drew. And getting him to talk was like a death sentence to me. He said, you've bothered me now. He said, you've harassed me for months. I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to give you 1 hour, and you can ask any question you want about what I saw and what's going on. But after that hour, I don't want to see you again. I don't want you to say my name, or I will kill you.
Wow.
We'll be dead, because they'll come after me, and before they get me, I'm going to get you. And he'd built a shielded room, a metal room, and in his business, and just James Bond type stuff. And we went in there, and he gave me an hour. I could ask anything and write down and draw anything, and that was it.
Just James Bond type stuff.
Oh, look, it's
that.
amazing when you think about it.
Wow,
but
that's
anyway,
amazing.
aliens. Now, the alien thing is an important issue. It's a very important issue, because this is going to come out in the public fairly shortly.
Yeah.
We're going to have a false flag alien invasion, alien presence. They're actually going to admit the presence, and they're going to offer us help to get rid of the little gray critters that have been abducting everybody and hurting them. But here's the truth behind this. Those gray critters were being built or grown here on Earth by the humans. I was saying about those human beings like us, taller, stronger, healthier, nice looking. But as far as I can tell from what they described, the security guy, the skin of them out in the sunlight, if you get their skin and rotate their hand, say, in the sunlight, you will see a slight rainbow kind of irradiance on their skin, because instead of like normal cells like we've got, they've got little scales.
You're talking about the taller...
Yeah.
aliens.
Now they built these little gray critters. They're like cyborgs. They were created for a specific purpose, to go and do genetic testing, to grab humans and crossbreed them with various things to produce an army of beings that are human-like, but can house the intelligence, the spirit, the soul, if you wish, of these disembodied people, like they're in a parallel universe. They want to operate in our universe, operating avatars. And the little gray critters were just designed to get the information for that, and to help build a new kind of human, a hybrid, which was basically soulless, could be controlled by these beings in the parallel universe. And these records, if you look in the ancient Hebrew and Sumerian texts and stuff, you'll see that they are mentioned, and as the Watchers and people like that. Right. And they had good guys and bad guys in that. And the good guys, in my opinion, are the ones that helped Moses and Noah and stuff, and they support the established order that God has set up, rather than the rebellion, which is being played out here on the earth.
Right.
And the earth is, in our presence on it at this point in time, is more or less like a virtual courtroom to resolve the challenge that Lucifer made to the Elohim, saying, I want to change the order of the way we do things in their world, their parallel universe to ours. And the Elohim, God, said, let's not destroy our dwellings here and our people by having a war between us. Let's go down and try your theory here in a model here in a virtual reality, which is Earth. It's virtual to them, it's real to us, but anyway. And these little gray critters were made, as I said, by the fallen ones that were cast out to run this courtroom here, were made to prejudice the results of the trial, if you wish, the testing of the way that Lucifer wanted to run the heavens. Anything that happens here is not going to hurt the heavens and the parallel universe. That's why it's done here, no collateral damage. And we've talked about this in the military for a number of years now, since computers have come in, about having virtual war in computers, so that we don't have infrastructure damage, and whoever wins the virtual battle is the champion, which makes sense. But that's what we're living in, is one of those things that happened a long time before we were created. Yeah, and I think we actually did an episode on that too. We did. Yeah, we're at that point now this year, where the situation is going to become so dire for the people of Earth, not just America. We're going to have an economic catastrophe worldwide. We're already starting to see the droughts and the food shortages that will come from that. We're seeing the threat of an absolute third war, which will be nuclear, starting in the Middle East. We're seeing posturing for that. Iran against Israel, the United States is going to have to go over and help Israel. And Obama doesn't really want to do it, but he's going to pretend to be good and do it and all that kind of stuff. What we're going to see here in the United States is a preemptive strike by the Russians and by Hezbollah, whoever else is allied with them, to ruin our infrastructure to the point that we cannot go over and impede the Russian support of Iran and invade Israel. All of this is going to happen within the next year, I'm reasonably certain. And wow. You can just, I mean, if you don't even look at the Bible and just look at current events, you will see that we're headed for war on a big scale.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can see that the weather has gone, chaotic, extremes, and climate changes are happening. All these things you can see without having read the Bible once. That does make you, though, want to look for a way out.
Right.
This.
Right. The alien deception that, I've looked at, Basil's looked at, and a lot of the researchers we've interviewed and talked to, a lot of them tend to agree that, they're going to appear sort of as our saviors, if you will, our helpers. And that's going to be the great deception that's talked about in the Bible. And the Bible also talks about, of course, those whose names were not written in the book of life. And, I think it's interesting because I thought, the Bible talks about people who blot their own names out. And so when it talks about, those whose names are not written, it makes me wonder. And then you talk about these tall guys that are not exactly human, or they look human, but they're not exactly human. They've been here for a long time, I'm presuming. Is that kind of where you're at with who these people are? And,
Sure.
And so they are the quote unquote B'nai Ha Elohim that we read about in Genesis 6 and so on.
Yep. Yeah. Look, they're going to be a hard act to discredit on the day that they come and say, look, we were there at the crucifixion,
right.
Jesus was, a prophet that we put in here. And in fact, let us show you actual video or, images we've stored in holographic form of the crucifixion itself and what Jesus really looks like and that kind of stuff. And we were there. We've moved forward in time. We don't age like you do. And we're here to help you. And it's going to be a hard act to discredit when it happens. But before it happens, all of us who are saying, watch out, there's a great deception coming, we can say that now and it won't be sour grapes. It will be a warning that people can look back on and say, these guys knew beforehand, and they're not just saying sour grapes. This was prophesied. So that's why we're all being led by the Spirit, I'm sure, to release what information we have from the different vectors we're coming from, to warn people, don't believe when they come to help us. They're going to get rid of the gray critters. They're going to be heroes. They're going to get rid of those abduction guys. And, they're not widely or well thought of in the universe, these little gray critters, they'll say, and we're going to get rid of them, and we're going to help you, and we're going to help your economy. We're going to set up a one world government and fair food and water and shelter and provision for everyone, and it'll be a wonderful golden age. It's going to be hard to argue against that when that happens.
Just hearing you talk about it gives me goosebumps because it's one of those things that I felt so passionate about ever since I've come to understand these things. And, for example, I was looking recently at the 10 kings that are supposed to, be given 1 hour to rule with the beast that's in Revelation. And it's interesting because John in that passage talks about, they have not been given authority yet, which seems to suggest that they were already alive when John penned the book of Revelation. And they, they may be just kind of hanging out wherever, flesh and bone, maybe not flesh and blood, but flesh and bone, wherever, underground bases or wherever. But let me ask about the technology a little bit. What is these technologies that is being suppressed, and is this part of the holding back of the technology? Is that also part of the grand arrival, if you will, of these aliens? They're going to unleash this technology, and it's going to be, again, difficult thing to, I guess, debunk when it happens, because science in general is going to be confirming a lot of what these quote unquote aliens are going to be preaching. Am I kind of on track with that, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, to a degree, understand that early in the piece, just after World War II was over, that the world leaders at the time, the Illuminists, some of them were already into the dark arts, but they were trying to figure out how to bring the nations, I think there were 180 some odd at the time, the nations of the world together into a manner that we could all agree and have uniform, code of justice and economy and dollar would be the same in any country and work conditions would be great. But they couldn't figure out how to get these 180 nations to agree. Now, we got 247 of them now, but at the time they were looking at, less than 200. And they knew that they couldn't force people, because Hitler tried that, and the French resistance proved that wouldn't work in the long term. And they couldn't, get people to agree. The League of Nations had failed, and the emerging United Nations concept wouldn't work because they couldn't get that many people to agree on giving up their sovereignty, that many government. Yeah. So they figured that the only way, the alternative three, was to fool the people into bonding together to face a common enemy that's so powerful that if mankind didn't bond together, he would be destroyed. This is going to be, the blue beam, the false project, whatever. Right. But that was the early discussions. As things progressed in the late 40s, early 50s, and the gray critters and some of the tall, Nordics met with our people at Holloman Air Force Base and elsewhere. As that happened, the game changed, and the technology that they were already suppressing on our side became even more suppressed as they started exchanging people and testing for technology from the alleged aliens. Now, I don't know how many of the Illuminists really know where these beings came from, but at that time, they probably thought, boy, this is a lucky break, because instead of us having to do the world government all by ourselves, here's technology already ready-made. Now, for it to work, the technology had to be hidden from the public so that it looked like something that no Earth person could have done. It came from no nation, backed by no politics, no. Okay. It had to be completely independent. All right. That makes more sense. And that has to be off-world, you see. And of course, Satan thinks that's great because he gets to play the part of little g God, you see. Right. And that's what Daniel speaks about in the book of Daniel. I've addressed some of this in just retranslating 8 verses out of Daniel, and I put that in the end of the final edition of the Cosmic Conspiracy in 2010. And I went to great pains. It took me 3 months to translate just 8 verses because there's a lot of external historical lookup and all that kind of stuff to find what Daniel was saying in code. And in essence, our world leader will have those 10 kings you're talking about under him. And whether they are beings from a long time ago, or whether they are earthmen that are appointed to that position now, I don't know. But I do know that in Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where he's looking at the statue, gold and brass and silver and all this stuff, down at the bottom are 2 iron legs, which extrude down into 2 feet, which have toes of clay and toes of iron. Right. 10 toes altogether. It doesn't say how many are iron or how many are clay. Right. The clay, when I translated that portion of that vision, the clay does not mix, the iron does not mix with the seed of man, as iron does not mix with clay. Right. They were talking about the mixing of the gene pool between the aliens and the mankind, which was the clay vessels, the fragile little clay vessels. Now, there are 10 toes there, and I think those are going to be the 10 kingdoms that are on the east and west side of the revived Roman Empire, the 2 legs of iron, which was Roman Empire. It'll have the western side heading from, about Turkey westward, and the eastern side goes over to China and Asia and that kind of stuff. The 10 regions of the planet are already mapped out, and they were in 1978 when I first wrote The Cosmic Conspiracy. Right. On page 200, I have the map of the 10 regions that will have 10 kings. So this is not idle speculation. We have known for some time what they're doing and why they have done it, and the computer modeling that went into it by the Meadows Report and whatever else at Club of Rome. It's upon us. It is all laid in the background waiting for the moment for the New World Order to emerge. And even Dumbo, the Vice President Biden, has been talking about the New World Order in the last couple of days.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order, because the global order is changing again. And the institutions and rules that worked so well in the post-World War II era for decades, they need to be strengthened, and some have to be changed. So we have to do what we do best. We have to lead. We have to lead. We have to update the global rules of the road. We have to do it in a way that maximizes benefits for everyone, because obviously it's overwhelmingly in our interest. This is not a zero-sum game. It's overwhelmingly in our interest.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I say to Holly every now and then, did you see the off-ramp from Earth somewhere? How do we get off of this place?
Now, I do want to get a little bit more specific because you talk about the aliens and then you talk about the deception and you talk about the game that's being played. Now, what exactly would you, getting into detail, call the aliens in reality?
Well, they're the rebels out of the existing order that God has in the parallel universe to us, which is, around us everywhere, but at a different frequency. So they can see us, we can't see them. And they're the rebellion that has come through. I think more of them will appear suddenly very soon, being cast out of that area for the final battle here.
Right. Okay. Now, what sort of connection exists between sort of an extraterrestrial / extra-dimensional thing? Is it strictly extra-dimensional, or do you think there's some sort of extraterrestrial component involved?
Do I think that there can be other life forms spread out through the universe that we know? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I mean, I guess I was specifically referring to the aliens that you've come in contact with, but...
Well, they are beings that have come through the gateway. Ezekiel saw the flaming chariot descend out of the sky. And Moses talked to a burning bush and couldn't look directly at God, or the energy of looking at the energy of God would destroy him if he faced him direct on. He had to look at a projection. Yeah. And this is how I understand the physics of it, in that the energy density on every atom in our world is, let's say, is 1. And you go through the membrane to the parallel universe or concentric universe around us, and you would have to warm your atoms up to the energy density that they're at.
Right.
Which is why when angels from the God's parallel universe to us come through the membrane into our area, they are glowing and hot and flaming, because their atoms have to discharge the energy and come back and normalize to our level. It's why stories of ghosts coming from underworld are cold in the room, because they're sucking energy out of our level because they aren't at our level.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
That is very interesting.
Now, there's a growing disparity in the energy density between God's universe around us and our universe. So much so that in the old days, at the time of Noah, God could walk with Noah, have a chuckle with him, walk through the garden with Adam and all that kind of stuff. By the time he got to Moses, he couldn't do that without hurting Moses by his presence. So the disparity in the energy levels are growing. And as Revelation tells us, in the end, after the millennial period, the heavens and the earth that we know will pass away, but a new heaven and a new earth will replace it. And I think this is where the merger of will be absorbed into the upper level, because we're no longer needed here in this form.
Right. Now, that's a spectacular explanation of that. And a big thing that we like to talk about here is, we talk about the spiritual and the scientific all, in one pot here. Is there anything else kind of like that you've come across, or that you could that you spend time explaining, that you could share with us in regards to sort of a physics explanation to some of the more spiritual, miracles or manifestations that?
Okay. This virtual reality, this virtual courtroom was set up so that mankind was to break free of God and to go our own way following Satan, and try to use his method of building a workable community here on the earth to show it could be done in the heavens. Right. Well, okay. Now, in the beginning, I'll say back the beginning of Israel, when they left the Egyptian imprisonment they were in for 400 and some odd years, when they made the Exodus, a group of us did a study of that over many, many months, and retranslating the Hebrew of the the Torah in that section of it about the miracles that happen as they cross the Red Sea. The first really interesting thing there is it's Pharaoh and his chariots are up on the ridge, and they've got Israel trapped with the Red Sea, the arm of the Red Sea, but it's the Red Sea. It's a shallow sea behind them, and Egypt, up on the ridge, ready to come down and get them. Well, the Bible in English doesn't tell you this, but in Hebrew, what happened was something descended over the entire nation of Israel at that time. They're on the shores of the Red Sea, and it descended in a cloud form, high winds, and it was a thin layer of wind so that the Egyptians could see the nation of Israel. Israelites could see Egypt, the Egyptians, but they could not harm each other through that wall of wind. It was around them. Now, modern science has proven that tornadoes and hurricanes form a thin wall of spinning air around them, and that the vacuum that everybody thinks happens in the center of a tornado isn't there. It's in that thin wall. In essence, hot, warm air, dry air comes down through the tornado and hits the ground, spins around and goes back up around the outside of the funnel. And that's where the vacuum is in that thin wall. That's why Egypt couldn't get to Israel, and Israel couldn't get to them. They couldn't hurt each other. But this was so big, this funnel, that it went clear across the Red Sea, that little branch there, the Suez Canal type thing. It went across that area, and the easterly wind they're talking about, Israel was on the shore side, so to them it was easterly wind, and meant the thing was spiraling clockwise. It was pressing down on the Red Sea and forcing the water out beyond the envelope of the tornado, if we call it, or the super cyclone. And Israel was inside of a protective tornado in that area. Now, again, historical records show that in that area, even the Greeks knew about it, in that area there were frequently cyclones or typhoons or hurricane type things that form because of the winds and the landmass in the area and the heat and the cold. They even named a reed in the area Typhonus, which was like a typhoon. It was a hollow reed that would suck water up. Anyway, that's why they did it. Now, the Red Sea, you see, Typhonus. But anyway. Yeah. Israel is inside this thing, and the pressure coming down forces the water down and dries the seabed, down to the point where you could walk on it and bring your wagons and stuff, and you wouldn't sink. So morning comes, and Israel starts to go across the other side.
From this place. Men cannot fight against a God.
Better to die in battle with a God than live in shame.
Praise God and down into it!
We're talking about a lot of people and a lot of livestock. So they go marching, going across over the other side, and Egypt is really, furious. They can't get through the wall of this energy and stuff. They can't get into the water with their chariots and their guys, so they're chomping at the bit to get them. And as Israel moves over to the other side and the last stragglers are moving over, the funnel starts to move with them. And as it moves over, covering them, Moses is standing on the other side holding his staff there saying, okay, come on, I got to drop the staff here shortly so that the funnel goes away. And Egypt is now seeing that they can go out onto the dry seabed, so they start racing out to go get them. And they get out about halfway. And of course, as the pressure is removed, all the water flows back in from underneath first. And it binds the wheels in quicksand. And they can't move. That's why I said their wheels broke off and they couldn't get out of it. They couldn't move their feet. They were stuck in it. And then the waves on the surface came in, whoosh, picked their bodies and their chariots up and threw them back onto the Egyptian side so they didn't bother the Israelis. Now, this was using the physics of our earth that God used to perform that miracle. And
Amen.
He wasn't bringing any magic to it. It was simply, using the things that he set in this world in the virtual reality that were allowed to be here. On the other side, after 3 days travel, Israel is thirsty. And they say to Moses, hey, If you brought us out here to die, there's nothing here but just desert and no fresh water, all this brine from the sea. So what does Moses do? He says, okay, have these young men get these kind of pieces of wood, go up into the hills there and get these poles of wood and throw them into the middle of this salty brine pool that you say we can't drink, and it will make it pure drinkable water. So they throw it out into the air and down into the salt water. Fresh water just wells up into it and fills the whole surface of it with fresh water. Now, how did that happen? People didn't know. We found a military map of that area, 1 to 100,000 scale, and it showed the military where they could get fresh water in under desert wadis, the dry riverbeds have water underneath them. And we found out that right close, just up in the mountain, inland from where these bitter water ponds are, that there was a snow melt that occurred, and it flowed fresh snow water down into the wadi, through the sand, up underneath the brine things, and formed an inversion layer where you had salt water on the top and fresh water bottled. And as soon as the logs hit it, they broke the inversion layer. The salt water, being heavier, fell down to the bottom through the middle and pushed up fresh water. And there it was, a miracle, but still using the things that God set in motion for all of us to use.
Right, exactly.
So these are some of the things that you find by going into the original language. And, I never cease to be amazed at what I can find, reading into the Bible that way. They're just... they're encouraging things too. So
right, no, that's just perfect. I mean, at least personally, that's a big thing for myself. Is it's the stuff you hear about and the stuff that still happens is it's not magic. It's all part of the plan, and it's all built into the physics and the universe that God gave us here to work within. And so that's really encouraging to hear things like that. And I'm glad you and your cohorts there have been able to open that window for us so we can get a little bit more insight.
Well, it's certainly been a pleasurable experience for us to sit around the table and debate these things. It's been many years since I've done that, but
right.
It makes your faith a lot stronger.
Amen. Well, you got something?
I just wanted to ask real quick what your thoughts are on, we just have a new pope, and I don't know if you know about Tom Horn and Chris Putnam doing their work. When the disclosure effectively happens, is it going to be ships over the major cities of the world, or is it going to be more like NASA making an announcement? How do you see this thing coming down? Is it the world governments just, stepping out onto a podium and saying, hey, we're not alone? Or
This is going to be a surprise to the Illuminati as well. They're thinking that when the aliens make their announcement to set up the world government, that the Illuminists are all going to be rewarded, but they are traitors and they are a problem. And as soon as Satan takes over, he's going to disappear a lot of these Illuminists, and people are going to cheer because they're getting their just due.
Right.
And that's one big surprise that's coming for them. They're dead meat. The other surprise about the technology and how they're going to announce it, they will come in their craft, and they're going to be big, like the one in the Phoenix Lights issue. They're going to be half mile in diameter, and our physicists will say that's impossible. Nothing can be made to travel that fast and to be that big and support itself over such a distance, because there's nothing made on Earth, no material that would support the tensions as this thing starts to move. It would fall apart from its own weight.
Right.
Impossible. Of course, they're not factoring in localized gravitic nodes all across the bottom, which give you a uniform gravitational field across the whole thing. That's going to impress most of the scientists of the world in saying they're not from around here.
Right, right.
We believe it. They're not, an American secret project or whatever else. They are real.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, I guess, that the science, it may not make sense, but then once they see, I guess, this new quote unquote physics or the technology, they will approve of it in a sense, because they'll say, oh, I get it now. This is advancement. This is the unified theory coming together. This is what Einstein has sought and all this stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very powerful deception. But I mean, obviously, we're here trying to warn folks. But what's the best thing that you think we can do? We can continue to do, I guess, to warn others and And what has been your experience just getting the word out? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you've had your haters emailing or calling or whatever, but what do you recommend that we do just in light of this information, and how do we go about evangelizing to the world?
Well, what you're doing, making a platform and bringing the discussion, is reaching people you need to reach that will use your avenue, your venue, to gain knowledge. And you'll educate certain members of a family, and they will in turn try to talk to their other family members and probably get rejected and whatever. But the trick is to have, good, solid teaching about the technology, about the reason for the deception, and just keep putting it out there. I mean, Holly and I are just two people, and we reach 180,000 people a month that come by our website. And we couldn't do it by ourselves. The good Lord does it, and people out there helping do it. Shows like your own are taking information from our website and saying, look, read this, see this. This is what it's all about. One thing you want to watch, and this is a timing thing for when this revelation of the alien presence is going to be made, is it will come at a point where the people of all the nations of earth are seeing imminent doom and, an immediate end to their life. And they want to have someone help them solve the problem. Now, we are, movies and the internet have been warning people about an asteroid impact. We had a couple of meteors that were pretty exciting here recently. It came in the atmosphere. And so they're thinking, well, we could get hit by a meteor, but that's not the immediate thing. The immediate thing is, I don't have enough money to feed my family, and there's not enough food out there even if I've got it. And shortly there's going to be more disease spreading through the planet, and that's going to worry people. At the height of these various stress curves in humanity, we're going to be faced with the nuclear war in the Middle East and an atomic war. Everybody has been conditioned to see that is not going to be good. And when they're about ready to push a button, people are going to be saying, wait, hey, come on. And it's not the governments, it's going to be the people that are crying out for this. And with the Catholic, with the Vatican at the moment, with this new Pope, recognizing aliens can be baptized and getting us ready to meet aliens, he is laying the groundwork for people, the common people, to say, well, have they got the answer? Can they help us? Do we trust them? Well, sure, that's okay. They're God's creations too. And all of this is going to have to come to the forefront, and all these different crisis curves meet, and the people of the earth saying, help us, and they appear over our cities, just like in the movie in the series V.
Arrival. There's been no contact with any of the 29 ships now hovering over the major cities of the world.
My name is Anna. Don't be frightened. We mean no harm.
The newly opened visitor healing centers are drawing huge crowds.
These heal me. It's amazing.
Standing by to go to air. Don't ask any questions that would portray us negatively.
Afraid I don't have a choice.
This interview is now canceled.
The visitors didn't just get here. They've been here for years.
They've been printing fake docs, passports, IDs, best fakes I've ever seen.
Once embedded among us, they set out to cause worldwide instability.
C4.
They've been implementing a plan that will result in the extermination of every man, woman, and child on the face of this earth.
We help build a resistance.
You have to fight.
Kenneth Johnson wrote that, the books on that, and then they made the movies, the document, or the series on that. And he used so many biblical references in there indirectly that you couldn't help, being a Christian, you couldn't help seeing what he was warning people about. They're going to come looking like us, but they're really reptiles underneath. They're really serpents. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And the thing that beat him in the movie, that got him to run away, was that they had the blood of a half-human, half-alien child. It was a girl in this case instead of Jesus. But that blood, the extract from that blood, they spread it out by balloons, and it ran away all the bad dudes, the aliens. And there are just reference after reference in there that if you know the Bible. It was a way to hit the secular market and say, here's a situation that you might be aware of or might be wary of when it comes. And we've had since the 1970s now, then from that book and that series and stuff, to have that soak into our mindset. So I'm warning people, be careful. It is upon us very shortly.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, no, V, unfortunately, did not last very long on television, but did follow it, and some of that stuff was very blatant to me as a Christian. But the timetable you talk about, it being so soon, I could understand is probably a little bit alarming to some people, but obviously we have nothing to worry about since we know the truth, and we can place our faith and our hope in Jesus Christ and the salvation that we receive through him. Now, in the context, I mean, what are you working on now? I mean, is there anything else that you are currently focused on? Any new projects, or what do you got going on now?
Oh, I've always got a few projects on the thing at once, and so does Holly. We just don't have time to even have date day anymore, and that's bad. I mean, it's been several months of that, and it's been probably 7 years since we even got to take a week off and get out of town. So, we're both just up to the eyeballs with projects and helping people. Some call and they want to know, should they move out of this area or do this or do that, and some have a crisis of faith that we have to spend time talking to. But my project at the moment, and Holly's got a project on a book she's working on, and I'm working on slowly my second paper, which will be a small book, electronic book, on the nature of gravity and how it really works, and take the mystery out of gravity. And
well, I'm looking forward to that one. I'll tell you that much.
A lot of people are, and I'm going to say, I think in this, I've changed my mind. I'm going to go ahead and say in this some of the details about how you make a gravitic coil, how you make antigravity using electricity and magnetism.
Oh, please.
I was shown, actually, photos of the inside of the assembly area for the 30-foot diameter craft that our guys were building. And they showed me the cross-section of the hollow core and the flat wire cables that they wrap around it to take the current, and how it's distributed. Anyway, I'm working on that paper. I've been working on it for 2 years now, then making animations and things so that you don't have to be blinded by equations. You can see how it works.
Right.
And the other thing which is allied to that is a project I'm working on out the backyard here to make several ways to get free electricity out of the atmosphere, or relatively cheap electricity, using high voltage generators, high voltage motors, and also a autoresonant antenna, which is wound with a bifiller cable. All these things take time and away from private time here, and it's just I have to squeeze it in, and my mind is just kind of scattered between projects all the time, and Holly will sit there, and sometimes I'll be looking off into space, and she'll say, "Okay, which one is it?" Well, today I'm working on bifiller filaments. I'm trying to get that solved, and
oh my goodness!
But that's what I'm working on. So
right. Well, amen. Those are some exciting things, at least for me to hear about. And as a fan who would be waiting for some stuff like that, you have my permission to take a day off, Stan. I will give you that, all right? And if anybody asks, you can just say Basil said it was okay.
Baz told me it was fine.
There you go.
Dear. Well, we all do what we can. I'm sure you guys are under the gun a lot in your life, trying to do this show and other things at the same time.
Absolutely.
But be encouraged. We know the end. We've already read the end of the book, so we know where it's going.
We do know how it ends.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Gons, you got anything over there, buddy?
Well, we just really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us. Hopefully you'll come back again and we can, especially when that paper comes out, we can dig into some of it. I know Basil's been trying to build a UFO in his garage for.
I've been tinkering away. That's why I was so excited to hear, you were able to at least get some sort of motivation as a youngster there. But I'm not having so much luck.
Yeah,
I'll be waiting for your paper to give me a little bit of a head start on some of that stuff.
Are you into electronics at all?
Yeah, very much.
Do you remember then? Well, obviously you do, but you can put a current into a coil
right?
Yeah.
around an inductor core, and you can put a DC current in. But as soon as you break the contact, depending upon the speed at which you break it, it generates a high voltage back EMF.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Did you know that if you wound that coil with 2 filaments of wire, but a bifiller, in other words, if you were to take, say, 100 feet of wire and bend it at 50-foot level, and so that both ends are in your same hand, but you've got a loop way out there 50 feet away, and you were to wrap that coil around that inductor and then put a direct current through that it will still have inductive reactance to itself, but you'll have no back EMF.
Really?
Which means that you can then switch between that coil and another coil wrapped around a torus with a break in it, and you can start stacking energy, and that's the whole secret of electrogravitics.
Oh, see, I knew. I just had I had to talk to you. Okay.
And here's another thought. Here's another thought on energy.
All right. Keep going.
You take that same 50-foot wire, and you put the loop of it, down on a fence post 50 foot away, and the 2 leads up in your hand here, and you twist that wire until you twist it all the way back up nice and tight, and you've got this twisted wire, and you put one of the leads to an arc gap going to the ground. The other side of the arc gap goes to the ground.
Right.
And then you take a little fire starter with those little click piezoelectric starters on them.
Right.
You need to start a fire, turn the gas off, but do a spark onto the open end of the antenna that's not referenced to ground.
Okay.
And kickstart it until it starts to auto-resonate. Now, because it has inductive reactance and capacitance, but at a high frequency, and because there's no back EMF problem, it is between 500 and 1,000 times more friendly energy it will store and resonate. And if you hit the right frequency, just kickstarting it and let it auto-resonate, it will start to build a field, and it will draw energy out of the atmosphere in that frequency bandwidth that it's self-resonating at. And you'll see arcs start to jump to ground through your gap. And then the whole trick after that is to put it into Tesla step-down circuits and use it at 120 volts.
Well,
I think
you have given me some. Well, I know what I'm going to be doing for the next week and a half. My goodness.
Look on the internet under bifiller, B-I-F-I-L-A-R, bifiller wire, and look at the characteristics of it. You'll have to dig a bit. It's not widely known. But you look at that, and one of my associates here in our Tesla group has wrapped. He took 2 DVD type clear plastic discs and put them about I think it was about a 1/16 of an inch apart. And then he took a bifiller wire, which was nothing more than some telephone cable, a telephone wire like in your house wiring. And he connected to make it so that the current ran down the length of it and then came back up. He joined the other end, so it made that loop. And he wound that around the inside of these 2 discs, filling up the cavity.
Okay.
And he gets TV and radio stuff from putting that onto his radio or his TV, stuff you not believe.
Yeah. I am sure. My goodness.
I've got one sitting here on my desk. It's just bifiller and auto-resonance.
Bifiller and auto-resonance. All right.
You want the thing to be able to resonate at its own frequency. You don't drive it like Tesla did.
Right.
You let the antenna drive you or your step-down system. Are you familiar with
Zen way to look at it?
Are you looking at? Have you ever looked at T. Henry Murray's work, Dr. Murray?
No, I've not in any sort of extent.
You've heard about it though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was a very clever fellow. He found this out himself, but he built upon what Nikola Tesla wrote and put in his patents. And in 1935, in fact, even before that, when Dr. Morey was working on this, he told people, come look at what I'm doing. I'll let you look inside my little box here that's about 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. You can take it all apart and see what I put in there. There's only one little small cigar box that I slide into that I won't show you. And there's an antenna outside and a ground wire here. And he says, and I'll let you see all but the secret of this little box. and he had attorneys, judges, sheriffs, scientists, everybody look at it. He took it to Washington, tried to patent it. They said, because you can't tell us where the energy is coming from, we're not going to give you a patent for it.
Right.
Okay. Now, he was drawing 5 kilowatts day and night. No problem at all. 5 kilowatts. He said 10, but I'm sure it was 5 because of the frequency involved. But anyway.
Okay.
He had about an 85-foot antenna that he would stretch between 2 poles. Now, everybody was looking at the box and the little cigar box that went into it as the secret to his method. Even his own son didn't know the secret because I've talked to John.
Right.
This guy wanted to build. He wanted to have control over that and make money for the research he'd done. He was not stupid.
Right.
They wouldn't give him a patent, so he was not going to lead him to the secret.
Mm-hmm.
The secret was not in the box.
I saw that come in.
It was the Tesla coils and stuff they took apart. They said he had Tesla circuits in there, but nothing out of the ordinary, capacitors, inductors. But he wouldn't let us see the little cigar box. Well, in one of the papers that he wrote himself, he reported how he didn't report this. His biographer reported that when he was showing the device, that it stopped, it failed, it auto-detuned. And so as it did, it happened because someone had bumped the table where he had the box sitting, and they'd heard a little tinkling sound, and then it stopped. And he said, "Oh, just a minute, I'll fix that." And he pulled the cigar box out and turned his back around and did something or other, put the lid back on it, shoved it back in the slot, and ran a magnet over 2 iron rods, which was, magic again for the viewer.
Yeah.
And he did it a couple of times, and sure enough, it kickstarted again. He tuned it, and then fine, it was power again. Now, that little tingling sound was a small, lightweight piece of metal that was between 2 electrodes. And what he was doing with the magnet over the iron rods, he was causing that to spin without any spin, to generate a high voltage spark mechanically to kickstart the magic, which was the antenna. And nobody thought about the antenna. Oh, just an antenna. The antenna was the whole secret. And so, gosh.
Yeah. Well, I have not followed that guy, and I will have to look more into him on your recommendation. So this has been just a splendid little lesson here, which is going to kickstart the rest of my experimental, probably month and a half, 2 months. Who knows where that'll go.
Well, give me feedback if you get in trouble or if it's working, whatever.
Yeah, well, I will be in contact with you for sure. So keep an eye out in your inbox there for.
We've looked at some of the mathematics of a guy named Marco Rodin, and I think his name was Randy Powell. And they had basically an equation that kind of circulates, and they said that it was if you can, move that mathematics and make it into a physical thing, that they would have, free energy. Have you heard about them before?
No. No, but I tell you what, there are a number of ways to get energy out of the universe and make it into electricity. One of them that is kind of out of the reach of the average home inventor is called a thermionic generator. And it is a method of extracting infrared energy that's, electromagnetic, that's being transferred between atoms all the time around you. It's the thermal background noise level between atoms. That's how they share energy. And there's a way to interface with that energy with a diode referenced reference point, so that you can trap that energy into your electric circuit, a tuned resonant cavity, and you can steal that infrared frequency and convert it to electron motion inside of this tuned cavity.
Right.
And it cools the air and mass around you. converts that heat you're getting, which is electromagnetic radiation. It's a waveform rather than vibrations or spin, and it converts that into electricity, which you can use to cook your dinner. And so, in essence, you air condition the outside of that, where you're getting the thermionic transfer. And one way they found to do this is using triboluminescent materials. And triboluminescents are like, well, if you've ever taken a wintergreen lifesaver in the dark and broken it apart, you saw piezoelectric discharge. Okay, well, in the old days when TV had big screen, the tubes, that you looked at the tube, the covering on that screen was made out of various compounds of zinc oxides, zinc sulfides, whatever, and that's a triboluminescent material. So instead of breaking it, what you do is you hit it with an electron at a certain voltage, and it makes a spot of light. So the electron is converted, into light. Now, you can also take the reverse of that, which is the Einstein photoelectric effect. You can hit that screen with a certain frequency of light, and it will generate an electron or electric flow. So now, what Morey did was he used some exotic metals he put together and ores and things, and he was able to make a triboluminescent converter in one of his cells. And you don't need to do it the way he did it, because it was very awkward. But the small 30-foot diameter crafts and stuff we're talking about, they drive on thermoelectric generators where they produce electromagnetic radiation in the infrared band and convert it with a triboluminescent interface, which makes electricity to power the gravitic coils and stuff. Okay. And they run these things off of a, probably 2-3 foot diameter device. And the device is not producing real time the amount of energy you need to lift a 30-ton vehicle up and take it off at high speed. What it does is it gives you less power than that, but it gives you that power over a few seconds or minutes, and you stoke it up. You stack the field in and around the craft and the crew until you reach the point where now it's got its own gravitic field. It's stored up to the point. Now all you need is a little bit of energy to scoot that thing on down the road, because you're not having to lift it up. It's a storage system.
Wow. So does time get dilated or anything in that situation?
Yeah. When you're flying straight and level at an altitude you've set your gravitic field for, the time is relatively unaffected. It's when you go to change direction to steer the thing.
Right.
That's why they move in jagged motion and not curves. They go straight line, point A to point B, stop, and go to a different direction. They will give a crew warning that they're going to make a turn. And when they go into the turn inside the craft, time dilates for them so that they look out the window as they're making the turn. And if they could see people on the ground while they're making the turn, they'd see those people go just into slow motion, not moving. Right. And inside the craft, well, they've got time to have a cup of tea and play a game of cards as they turn the corner.
Right.
Now then, okay, we've turned the corner. We're going to blow off the extra energy here that we've added to the field to make the turn. Prepare to go back to normal time. Now on the ground, what the observer is saying is this bright light comes up and makes a right angle turn at 12,000 miles an hour and takes off the other direction. On board, they've had, in that little fraction of a second, a lot of time to amortize the inertial changes to their atoms around that turn, and then blow off the energy as a burst of light. And you'll see that a number of UFO reports have said that as it turned the corner, it seemed to go brighter for a second, and then do that. And sometimes they will go bright and there won't be any more light at all. It'll be gone because they will have vectored at a high speed to somewhere else.
Yeah.
But time does dilate. Yeah, it does dilate.
And so how, in one of these crafts, can you effectively travel to anywhere in the universe, or is there a limit to?
I don't know, but they certainly are interstellar. They using a thermionic conversion, they can also convert energy, nuclear energy, by tuning to spin resonance and, in essence, transmute a heavy element down to a lower, a lighter element over a period of time by stripping the energy off by tuning to the spin resonance of the outer shell of the atom.
Right.
And that way they can convert it without having stray, photons and particles scattering through the thing have to be shielded and that kind of stuff. You don't want that. You just need to take the energy out. You can take lead and transmute it to gold.
Yeah, what do they usually use when they do?
Well,
work
they
with
probably use
processes
heavier
like that?
elements. There are a number of exotic heavier elements. I've heard Bob Lazar say that it was element 115. I don't know,
Right.
but it's basically something that can be hit with a
Many
stream
times.
a stream of particles, let's say, waveforms, and it will produce electricity as a byproduct of that.
Right.
You still need the triboluminescent interface to do it, but what they're using, I don't know. And but I do know it works, and they can go in that particular aspect to many places a long way from here.
Right.
And the speed of light is not a limit velocity. It is the limit measurable velocity by an observer independent of the craft. By warping space ahead of you into a curl, like a smoke ring emanating from the front of your craft and curling around behind it, which is what the saucers and the long tubular shapes do.
Right.
You can create a field that takes the inertial exchange between the sea of space and the field and your passage through it, and distributes it as heat rings behind you, way back in your path behind you, so that you don't overheat and your frictional limits can be exceeded because you are breaststroking through the field at high speed. And that's how you break through the alleged light barrier. It is no more than breaking through the sound barrier, which is a wave situation.
Right.
But you have a way by propelling the craft by entrainment instead of propulsion. You entrain your way by pulsing your energy wave ahead of you, and so that it deflects space to curl around you and to form a low pressure area ahead of you and a high pressure area behind you.
Right,
And this allows
exactly.
you to and look, Einstein jumped on something that Lorentz and Fitzgerald jumped on from the Michelson-Morley experiments that proved that, to everybody's belief at the time anyway, that if you shot a light beam and split it so that half of it was going out toward the right side of the planet and the other half was going in the direction of travel, and when you reunited them from two mirrors, that they would come back out of phase if the one on the right was traveling through a medium, an ether space. Okay, there'd be a resistance
Right.
and slow. And when they got back, there was no change. They said, well, obviously we're not moving through an ether, so therefore we have to figure out some way to explain what's happening. So Lorentz and Fitzgerald said, look, we can set up an equation, square root of 1 over v squared minus 1 over v squared over c squared. This will be our transform. And what that means is that when you approach the limit speed of light in space, that you will become infinitely flat because you're meeting your own inertia reflected back at you, and that's the limit. What they did not consider at that time, but they did later, was that when you are moving through space with an object like Earth, you will get that differential motion. You can detect it. But when the space around you is moving at the same speed you are, and it is moving you like a tea leaf spinning in a cup, when you stick your little light beams out there around your tea leaf, they're not going out far enough to measure any difference because the tea or the ether space around you is moving you, and you're all moving at the same speed.
Right.
You're not moving through it.
Yeah.
It's just a point of reference. And when you do that, you don't need the Lorentz-Fitzgerald transform, which is the basis of Einstein's equal mc squared. And therefore, you can travel faster than the speed of light, but you need to do it cleverly so that you don't overheat and various other things. And I'm sure there's probably other things we haven't, focused on yet, as far as Einstein-Rosen type wormhole, a bridge.
Yeah.
CERN with the Large Hadron Collider, just a couple months ago, one of the physicists were saying that, once they are able to control and manipulate this God particle that they've been looking for, that they presumably found, they said that the gravity is going to increase tremendously in that spot, and they should actually be able to peer into different dimensions. These are like physicists saying that.
Well,
so,
yeah.
What do you think is going on at CERN? What are they? Is this just kind of the external facade of, oh yeah, we're trying to figure out this technology and science, or is there another agenda?
I don't know if there's another agenda. I do know that they are spending that kind of money. They are trying to understand how the universe works and to prove various prevailing cosmological models at the time.
Right.
But, to see which one of them is correct and so I can operate on it. And that doing that, we might be able to access energy, limitless energy and the Dirac or ether sea, around us. What do they call it? The 0 point energy.
Right.
Maybe even open parallel gateways to parallel universes and transverse back and forth between them. But it is a type of physics that they're studying which has big payoffs in energy, and which is dollars, which drives everything on this planet.
Right.
Look, when the Tower of Babel was a ziggurat type thing, a flat-topped pyramid. And I ran across a thing which I've got on my website under my show images page, which is a link to it down there by the microphone on our front page of standeyo.com. And you go over there and you'll see in the second row in the middle of it, it'll say the Tower of Babel, the Marduk Stela. And this was something the Germans found. And because the war went bad for them, about a third of this stela was destroyed. But what did survive shows in Babylon from a period of about 600 BC, the illustration of the Tower of Babel and the architectural plans of the top floor and the side view, which Marduk had ordered to be built or designed. And what you see there, and you read some of the Sumerian references as well to this type of ziggurat, is that, and the Genesis account of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, if you look at the translation of the word Babel that they're all using, it's Bab-El. In the ancient days, they all called God El for Elohim, and Bab is a doorway, so it was a doorway to God.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
and
that's right.
At the top of it, at the high point of it, is where God, or the gods in some cases they say, would appear, and that they would have to dwell on that level of the ziggurat for a few hours and make themselves, something to eat from the food that's stored up there. And then they would come down another level. And the reason for going to the level was so that they would discharge that high energy density on their atoms so that they would not hurt someone or kill them if they touched them when they got to the bottom. And, it's a gateway that even like when they talk about the angels that came to and fro on earth through Mount Hermon, that it was a high place. And when Jacob lay down on top of a mountain and slept on that stone, and he saw the angels going to and fro right next to him there when he woke up, and he stopped one of them and he had a wrestling battle with him and whatever, and it dislocated his hip and he became Israel after that. The whole thing was they're all on high places, and they need to change their energy density to touch us. Otherwise it will hurt us.
Right.
Just fascinating stuff. I mean, I'm sorry that they destroyed so much of this in the war, but it's now in a museum, I think, in I want to say Norway or one of the Scandinavian countries. I think it's where this private museum has the piece.
Really?
But you can see the cuneiform on it, and I've outlined in red on the stela the floor plan of the top part of it and the side view what has survived. But it's a fascinating thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
An actual Stargate, if you wish, the going to and fro through a Stargate.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is a dimensional gate. This is cool.
Yeah, my goodness. Now, why do you think, perhaps there are things like that being, in place today, being used by maybe some of the occultists or anybody.
Well, they're trying. And I know this because I was contacted when I was still in Perth by an individual that I don't know who all was member of his coven, but he was a Tesla coil builder, but he was building it in a big empty warehouse down by the docks in Fremantle. Right. An old thing over 100 years old that had cells underneath it, which were usually for grain storage and ship cargo storage in the old days. But this thing was no longer being used, and here he is in the middle of this huge, big, like factory, like big warehouse. And, he said, come and I want to talk to you about your Tesla coils. And I heard you did one coil back in Dallas that was a different kind that actually caused light to bend. And I want to talk to you about that. So I said, okay. So my friend Kim and I went out there to his place, and we're both Christians. And that's one of the reasons I had Kim go with me, because I knew I was walking into something that wasn't going to be clever.
Right.
And so we knocked on this big iron door and knocked, and pretty soon it slides. And he says, oh, okay, yeah, come on in, follow me back to the office. And there's this little office space, maybe 15 by 20 feet in the middle of this big factory. And, light discs and everything. But there's this beautiful Tesla coil he's built. And he turns it on for me, and it's one of the best ones I've ever seen. This thing sang. It was smooth. It was really good. And
I love the way you talk about that. It's kind of like one of those car guys who are like really into cars.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got your own thing, man. I like
Yeah. Well, anyway.
I would probably have the same reaction.
So we're looking at this Tesla coil. And he says, now, the reason I got you here, this guy, he says, is this donut coil here. You built something similar to this. I said, yeah, I did. I had 2-axis wind plus a 3rd-axis spin to, I was looking at gravitic control, but it actually bent the light in the room, and I felt like I was being pulled into it. It was just the illusion of all the light bending in toward me in the coil before it burned out, but I couldn't get it to work again. Right. He said, I've had the same problem with mine. I said, oh, yeah. And he showed me what he had there, and he says, it's possible that you can gateway to a parallel universe or something like this if you get the pulse just right. Well, now I'm thinking, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that exactly that way, but okay. Well, now he's talking to me, and he's facing me, but behind him is my friend Kim looking at this guy's desk and the papers on the wall, doing a bit of snooping. And Kim catches my eye with his hand and raises up a calendar, and behind it on the wall is Hebrew written down for the word sword. And I thought, okay, Hebrew. Okay, witchcraft, they use that, the Solomonic rites. Mm-hmm. And then he went over to the desk, still behind this guy, so the guy couldn't see it, and he raised up another piece of paper, more Hebrew on it. And this stuff was all hidden around there. So Kim thinks, well, maybe he'll go take a wander through the factory. So he says to the guy, look, you mind if do you have a John here somewhere? I got to take a leak real bad. Yeah, he says, well, look, just go exactly where I tell you. Don't deviate. You'll get lost. Go down in that corner there and turn left and go all the way down there and you'll find it. So Kim disappears for a while, and I keep talking to the guy about, his problems with these gateway coil and stuff. And Kim comes back, a few minutes later, and he says, look, he's right. The toilet's down there. You can find it easy. Why don't you go take a leak? Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Right.
And his eyes were big, and he whispered as I went past him, and you'll see a door down there, look on the right. And so I went on down there, down the hallway and out of sight, and there was a doorway there with a little kind of triangular or like a rhomboid type piece of glass in it, like a parallelogram. Yeah. And I looked through it, and the hair on the back of my neck stood straight out. It was the goat head up over the throne of whoever was the master of the coven, the circle.
Oh, wow.
Like audience seats up on the side. And I put the pieces together. Holy cow, this guy is trying to gateway demons or whatever into those cells down beneath.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow. Got out there. But I'll tell you what, they are trying to do it. And
right.
They've got some clever people working on it.
He brought you in to try to fix his problems so he could teleport some demons into this. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Strange stuff.
Absolutely. My goodness. Well, that is just tremendous. That is so awesome. I mean, just the story, my goodness.
Has anyone approached you to make your stories into some kind of, I don't know, some kind of...
I think they call them movie talkies now.
Talkies? I just think it would be fascinating to have you in the director's seat there and sort of recreate some of those experiences.
My goodness.
Well, someone
someday,
who was it? Some guy approached me here recently from Hollywood. to be a technical advisor on something that he's doing, a Christian fellow, but he was going to work in some of my stuff into his storyline. I'm not sure whether he will or get the funding or not, but
Right.
Other than that, no. I did approach Spielberg's people because he was in a documentary that I was in a few years back, and
Right.
and his graphic studio. We talked to one of the senior execs there, and he said, "Look, we're not going to be able to do it." And he says, "The reason is, we know what you're saying is good value, but we'll lose about 85% of our income because they're government contracts, and they won't allow us to make the movie like that." So
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah. So yeah, been kind of subtly, danced with, but they're not going to take me home after the dance.
Well, life's a tease sometimes. So,
Well, yeah, we're not going to be here long enough to make a movie anyway. I think things are going to happen that one way or another, that those of us that think like this are not going to be here anymore.
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I hear that. Now, okay, so I know you do a lot of interviews, and I've taken a look through your archive you got there. And but I mean, is there something that's people don't ask you about enough, that you just got to get off your chest? Well, I'm giving you this chance. I don't give everybody this chance, so you can take it for what it is.
In the Christian community, there is. I get the odd phone call and email and stuff, and DVDs that are sent from people that say you're leading the flock astray by saying there's going to be a pre-trib rapture.
Right.
And I haven't produced a formal discussion on the internet. I just didn't want to buy into having to waste time on the argument. But
Okay.
I look at it like a detective looks at trying to solve a murder. You follow the money. Who would gain from the death of this person, you see?
Right.
Now, I look at the rapture issue. Who would gain if the Christian church is told, you're going to have to go through 7 years of tribulation, real hell, and your head get cut off, you see? You're going to have to go through that. Well, that's going to demoralize the Christians, and Satan's side would gain from that. That's where the money would go there.
Okay.
Now, that's a post-tribulation rapture, and a no-rapture issue would be the same thing. What about you're going to have to go through 3.5 years of the tribulation, and a lot of you are going to be beheaded during that time, locked up and killed, that's going to demoralize a lot of people and move them away from the faith a bit because they're frightened, and they'll join, the New World Order or whatever to not be dead.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that say, here's the good news, as the Bible says, encourage each other with this good news. The rapture is going to come just after the man of sin is revealed at the beginning of his 7 years, and you will be out of there.
Right.
Now, that's good news. All the other viewpoints are demoralizing. They're to break the church apart. And if we were wrong, and I have no doubt in my mind, but if I were wrong on the timing of the rapture, at the beginning rather than the middle or the end, I'm not going to get any special favors from anybody else. And Holly and I tell people, stock up preparations, make ready for bad times, to endure as long as you can. So we tell them there will be a delay. There will be a time that you have to endure until he comes, until his friends come for the rapture to take you off. But just as he did for Noah, Noah made provision. And when the time came, his angels sealed them into the ark, and they went off into the flood zone, and they survived.
Yeah.
This time, because the earth is going to be destroyed by fire and terrible war and all kinds of stuff that's just going to make the planet almost uninhabitable, there's no safe place on earth. That's why we're caught up in clouds into the air to be with the Lord wherever he is. You're getting out of here because there's no place for him to give us a succor here on the planet at that time.
Right.
And the Holy Spirit does indwell the church, the believers. And when it is removed, and it's restraining the Antichrist at the moment, then the church goes with it, because that's where it's inhabiting the church.
Uh-huh.
The bride.
Right.
there are just so many things. I mean, that if people really seriously study this, they'll see that it's absolutely true. It's not a New Testament hoax. It didn't get started 200 years ago by Darby. The Jewish Bible in the Torah has it back in the tale of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham sends his own servants over to a foreign land to get the bride, choose the bride for his son Isaac, and to bring the bride back to him. And this is the pattern of the rapture. If you look at the most ancient Israel marriage and courtship and marriage ceremonies, you will see that they tell you about how a deal is made with the father by the groom. And after that deal is sealed and paid for, there's a shaking of hands, and the groom has, from that moment forward to a year later, anytime in that period of time, to come back for the bride after he has built a habitation for him and his bride at his father's house. Uh-huh. When his father gives him permission to come back and get the bride, then the groom can come back. But until that time, the bride lives with her parents, and she and her bridesmaids, some of them stay with her, have their oil lamps lit until midnight every night, waiting for him, looking for him. And when he does come, he doesn't come into the house. He sends his friends into the house to get the bride, to steal her away, put a veil over her head so no one can see who she is and where she's going. They take her out, and they meet the groom out there then, and off they go. Now, the parents in the traditional ceremony will wait up, and when the friends of the groom come in to steal the bride away, their daughter, they will be sure that it's the right guys and not some turkey trying to steal their daughter and get away with it. So they're the good guys. And then, okay, off they go. And they go through the town in the night. And people know something's happened because they're all happy and cheering and whatever and singing. And they are going to a place where they're going to have 7-day wedding feast. But the bride and the groom go into the hut, the marriage hut at the wedding party, to get to know each other. They're apart from the guests for that time until they come out and the marriage has been consummated. Now, the 7 days of the wedding feast is the 7 years of the tribulation. They go out away from here at the beginning of that period, and that whole tale is told in the wedding ceremony, which is why Jesus made such references to the virgins waiting for their groom in the night, keeping their oil lamp lit, and the 5 unwise ones didn't have enough faith, oil, whatever provision, did not have enough to endure, and didn't keep looking and lost the faith, and they lost going with the groom. You know, and there's so many things that point to this, and it's a pre-trib thing. And if the man of sin has to be revealed before the rapture can occur, then that means that it's at the beginning of the 7-year period. And that 7-year period will start when Israel is attacked by Russia, and the Russian army and the Germans, whoever else helping in that Gog-Magog invasion, will die on the mountains of northern Israel, a strange death. And for 7 years after that army has been destroyed, Israel will burn the weapons of war that are left behind for firewood. Now, that 7 years is the 7 years of the tribulation, which means that invasion comes at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation.
Right, because they're going to be looking for. That's right. I think there's a passage talking about looking for.
They will be burying the dead for 7 months.
Right. That's right.
And they will send scouts out to find the dead bodies and to mark them for the burial detail to go take care of. It's because I think that whatever kills the Russian army is going to be a bio agent or a chemical agent of some sort, that the bodies need to be disposed of properly to, keep people from getting killed or sick after the fact. Right. Let's see, what was that? That would be 7 years. I'll just look up the verse for you here. And burn, I think it is. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, Ezekiel 39:9. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaves and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years.
Wow.
That's right.
Well, there we go.
Well, you can see the thing that will cause the hooks to be put in the jaws of Gog and Magog and draw them down into the Middle East is a treaty with Russia and, say, Iran and Turkey or some of those areas, the Lebanon and Syria, to come down and defend them when they're attacked by Israel in this case, and by destroying the United States' ability to strike. Right. It will depend on God to save Israel instead of America.
Right.
And let's see, heathen shall no take no wood out of the cut down and they shall take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any out of the forest, for they shall burn the weapons with fire, and they shall spoil those that spoil them, and rob those that rob them. Hamon Gog. Anyway, you look in Ezekiel in those areas, and you'll see that. It's fascinating when you look at it in English and Hebrew as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Stan, thank you so much for this time.
Yeah, definitely.
And this has just been a great conversation and a nice little science lesson in there, in the middle there for everybody and myself. So this has just been so much fun. Thanks again for coming on to the show.
Well, I like talking about this. Thank you for inviting me, guys.
Absolutely. And Stan Deyo, everybody, make sure to go to standeyo.com and check out everything he's got there. Just a wealth of information. So make sure to do that. Check out his book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, and all sorts of other stuff there. Once again, thank you so much. We're going to have you on again some other time to talk about some, at least a little bit more detail, some of the things that we skipped over in the beginning. But
okay,
again,
that'll be
very,
fun.
very fun.
You get Gonzo to give me an email, or you do it, Baz, and we'll tee it up.
We'll do that, good. And I will keep in contact, and I'll let you know if I singe off any eyebrows.
Let me. All right. Well, I was building a Tesla coil back in Perth before, doing the book and everything. I had a house by myself, and I was doing some experiments in one of the bedrooms of the house that I use for building that kind of stuff. And I was trying to build a Tesla coil and use an old TV tube I got out of the junk pile to be my capacitor. And I figured, well, this would be really good. It's a perfect capacitor. And so I was trying to tune the coil, and little worms of voltage were jumping up, probably 50, 60,000 volts, were crawling up to the outside of my coil, and it was detuned, obviously. And so I was, and I put a new ground on that, didn't do it. This is at night one evening. Finally, I gave up and said, well, I'll figure it out tomorrow. I went to bed. I went out next morning to get the newspaper in the mail. Yeah. And the next door neighbor was a nurse, and she and her husband and kids lived there. And she came out, she was getting her mail and newspaper, and she says, hey, were you watching any TV last night? I said, no. Why? She said, well, we were sitting in the living room, and the darndest thing happened. The TV the image started to roll, and black lines and rolling picture. And at the same time, we heard odd noises in our kitchen. And when we went in there and opened up our oven where the noise was coming from, electricity was jumping in the air, and that little heater thing, that filament that runs around the bottom of it. I said, oh, really? It blew up the stove. I said, oh, really? Was it insured? She said, oh, yeah, we've got insurance. I said, oh, good. Well, see ya. Bye. I never said anything but I was transmitting waves that were detuned, but her oven was picking it up.
Right. Oh, gosh, that's hilarious.
Well, the guys that play with broadcast power, like with the Navy and some of them that have been building these things for a number of years, they were testing it in a country area for Project Sanguine. Yeah. And they were, broadcasting Tesla-type waves out. And one of the farmers complained that he knew it was something to do with the base, because he started sitting on his toilet to do a number 2, and an arc would jump out and bite him in the butt. And it was because the cavity in the toilet and the grounding of it was tuned to the frequency and it was absorbing energy and shocking him. Right. Well, another one of the farmers in that area was out working on his hay shed, which is, insulated post supporting a tin roof. And he was up putting on 10 roofing panels. Mm-hmm. And he kept getting charged up like when you comb your hair with a comb and put a piece of paper out, it gets charged up and dances off. Right. He kept getting charged up and sliding off and falling down the barnyard. So he complained to him about this, and they said, oh, well, here, we'll make this little conductive belt you wear around your middle, and we'll put a chain down to a ground on the bottom. And as long as you wear that chain, you can work on your roof and it won't hurt. So that was the solution. But
that is so funny.
They were doing the same kind of nonsense I was, I guess.
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, that's so funny. Well, wish me luck then. And
when you get off here, Baz, go to my show images page, and at the top you'll see missile shield anomaly, picture of the Earth and a little donut thing, and that's interesting to read and all that kind of stuff. But go down to the very bottom where that link takes you, and see the links I've given at the very bottom. They're hot-wired into the images on Google Earth with the latitude and longitude, and I will show you one of the biggest Tesla fields ever made by the Navy in West Australia.
Really?
It's a mile across. It's a big thing with 13 towers.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, I think I'm looking at it right now.
All right, you see what I'm talking about? Test site number 5 with 13 towers?
Yeah.
If you go to that area on Google Earth and start sliding down the coast slowly at that zoom, you will see about 8 or 9 other older tests they did before they built that one. I have actually one of the, or in fact, a couple of the capacitor tubes out of that unit you're looking at, the 13 tower.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at it. My goodness. That is amazing.
Oh, there's a lot of them there, and I even found one over in California, too.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. See, this is the kind of stuff we need to be.
We need to go visit this tower in California.
I'm on a road trip right now, by the way, Stan, and I need to plan a different road trip just to go try to get into these places without getting arrested. And that looks like a lot more fun than what I'm doing here.
Yeah, well, we all knew about it. I mean, when they fired up that 13 tower thing, I had one of the Navy guys, an American, was my neighbor, and he'd worked on the tower. And he said at night when they'd fire that thing up, it'd be like San Elmo's fire. The whole thing would glow in the sky.
My gosh, I'm sure.
Oh, they had, I forget how many kilowatts they were pumping into that sucker, but boy, it lit up the sky.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Okay, well, we got just real quick, we got to get just a real solid ending to the show.
Okay.
All right, so I'll give those a try for sure. And so, yeah, wish me luck on that there, Stan. You never know. Okay.
Take 2.
Take 2. All right.
This is reminding me of the gecko and the insurance commercial. Do you want my dramatic approach?
Oh my goodness, it's 3:00 over here, and
okay,
so
all right. Don't look at me. Just do your line.
Okay, I'll say wish me luck. You say good luck. Okay, you ready? Okay. Okay, here we go. All right, so wish me luck, Stan.
Okay, Baz, and don't singe the eyebrows.
Okay, everyone. Well, thanks again for tuning into another wonderful episode here of Canary Cry Radio. Make sure to tune in again. And until then, think outside the cage.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Canary Cry Radio. The show notes for this episode and many others are available at canarycryradio.com. Make sure to connect and like our Facebook page at facebook.com/canarycryradio. Follow us on Twitter at Canary Cry Radio. If you would like to share the show in video format, you can find us on YouTube by searching Canary Cry Radio. Review us on iTunes with 5 stars and give us a thumbs up on stumbleupon.com. We would like to thank those of you who have given us your support, prayers, and donations. If you would like to join us and support Canary Cry Radio financially, you could do so by visiting canarycryradio.com and clicking the support tab. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, remember to think outside the cage.
All right.
Wow, we really did, guys. Good job. My goodness.
Thanks,
I was doing a documentary over in Belgrade. Well, that's where we were filming at the time, but for Australian crew one time.
Right.
And these turkeys, they had me doing a reverse, an interview I'd already done, but they were doing reverse shots.
Uh-huh.
And behind the cameraman was the director who had some really good Jack Daniels a few hours before. And he was putting a little floating duck up over the head there and doing all kinds of nonsense. And I couldn't get my lines straight to save myself. And after about 5 tries, you couldn't even say your name right on camera,
Right. No, it gets worse every time too. You just can't stop giggling.
I know. And they still got away with stuff behind me. When I looked at the rushes on it, one of them made a little aluminum foil hat with antennas on it, and he was popping up behind me, it wasn't right. And I didn't know this. I couldn't see it because he was behind me, and it looked so bad.
That's hilarious. So do you do a lot of documentary stuff like that? Or?
Oh, I did in the past. I haven't. I've done some where they came here and filmed with Len Marzulli's group and with Patty Heron's group and the odd one here and there like that. Yeah, but I just haven't pursued it because there were so many other things that I felt were more important to pursue.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say, Gons and I here, I mean, mostly Gons, but we're going to be working on Age of Deceit 2 here. And it had been in production, but has recently suffered a disaster. So we're just going to be redoing some things. And,
what's Age of Deceit? Is it a video or a DVD or what?
It's a video on YouTube that I put out. Let's see, September 2011.
All right.
And check it out because it's got 1.7 million views right now. So
wow,
it's been not surprisingly, that's the wrong word, but it's been
surprising to me. So
very surprisingly successful. And so Gons had been working very hard on Age of Deceit 2. Much anticipated by fans, but has recently suffered a computer disaster, which has put us back at square one.
Oh no! Did it destroy your mix? Did it?
I lost about a half hour of what I was working on. So,
which translate to about 30 hours of work.
I know.
So
well, we on that documentary I was talking about, we were horsing around like that. It was on Tesla, and we shot like 7-to-1 ratio on what we used, and all of our masters were burned in a fire after we got the thing finished and produced. And there was one of the guys that was storing it to his studio caught fire and burned all of our masters. We never recovered from that. But,
the thing with the film is that the first one I tackled a lot of secret society stuff, but on this one, we really want to tackle some different stuff. But one of them that I've been trying to figure out a way to work in is this concept of free energy and like ether and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I mean.
Well, and that's what I was thinking, Gons, was a huge part of the Zeitgeist movies, which is the new agey sort of film. Yeah. I'm not sure if you're familiar, Stan. They're a large part of their film is the whole free energy type of thing and how that's going to lead us into the golden age.
Between that movie and Thrive.
Right, and
there's
Thrive.
Been a lot of, and that's the problem though. I don't want to just recreate Thrive, because
that's what I mean is if we come at it from a Stan Deyo biblical more
that's true
point of view from a guy who's been around it, will be because I believe addressing the technological part of the system that everybody is being programmed into is a huge part of keeping everybody in the light when it comes to the coming events. So
they're so simple. There's 3 or 4 different ways, maybe 5, I guess, to get electricity out of the atmosphere. I mean, you can run a wire up the side of your mountain. If you live at the base of a mountain, you can run it up so that its altitude is about 1,000 to 1,200 feet above you. And you can put a bunch of aluminum foil or some kind of metal collectors that are insulated, from the dirt. Connect it into that wire, and you get insulated wire, bring it down to the bottom and have a ground stake, and you'll get, in that situation, about 30,000 volts continuous.
Well, here's something I was just real quick I was doing the same sort of thing, the same Thessalonian thing with the aluminum plate and insulated it and had it. I think my problem may have been that the plate was too small. But then, bring it down to a ground with a what's the circuit called? I'm not sure exactly what
An
the
extra
circuit's
coil or what?
it serves the same purpose, but shoot, if I just could remember the name of the thing. Anyways, it's a Teslonian, one of his.
Yeah, he had a patent where he had that little flat plate up the top, and
that's the one.
He ran it down to a Tesla step down a circuit and a ground.
Exactly, exactly.
But what he didn't put everything in the patent.
I knew it. I know, and it's bothering me so much. Do you have the answer for me, or
well, his extra coil was a bifiller wind.
Okay.
I've got probably one of the biggest collections of his work here, and stuff that they even gave me over at the Belgrade Museum when we were filming there.
Right.
I'm just looking at my shelf, probably 1.5 feet, 2 feet of books and papers and patents and documents.
Right.
And I got to read his stuff that's never been published of his letters at Belgrade. Right. We bribed an attendant there, and they locked me into the room with all the photos and all the personal gear, his top hat, his cane, letters from the hotel in New York or where he was. And these were, I couldn't write anything. I could only memorize stuff. But so I came away with a lot of good information.
I was going to say, I mean, if you ever feel like getting back into your old James Bond, bribing security guards and this special business here, and you need a sidekick, just give me a holler.
Well, I guess, do you have ulcers or anything at the moment?
No, I'm in top health here.
James Bond might be cool, calm and collected and everything, but I'll tell you what, there were times where my tummy was doing a flip-flop where he was going to get away with this.
I'm sure, man. But I mean, that's that's something not everybody gets to experience, and knowing the reality that you and I do about the world in which we live.
Yeah.
It's you can either live the normal life or your time sneaking onto military test sites and discovering the mysteries of the universe.
Oh, look, we've Holly and I have done a few things since we've gotten together that where we had
little husband and wife espionage team.
Oh well,
that's
well, guys. Look, I better get some sleep.
Okay, no, thank you so much again, and I hope we talk to you soon.
Okay, well, email me, guys, and
thank you so much.
All right, guys,
I'm
going to hang up. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye.
Night.